Well, it's Friday morning at more or less 10. And I'm trying to make sure things are not working. Yeah. And we all find ourselves back here at Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons. And I'm at the table, the workbench, with pieces of the Apollo stuff, that model that I'm working on. And I really wish that I could show you the box, It would be nice if you could see the box, because then you could see the stuff that I'm trying to put together. But I have made progress over this last week. I have done things with the Apollo models. So I've got pieces here. Here's some pieces that have been primed, and all these little bits. Most of these little bits are inside the service module, which is what I'm working on. In addition to this bit is part of the escape tower, and here is part of the escape tower that I didn't prime yesterday, because what happened was that I made this little thing here, this piece of cardboard, and this comes off of this cone. In order to prime it, I have to take it off because I have to get on the inside of these things. And I was going to put the prongs, the little pins that fit into these holes. These pins fit into these holes here. I was going to put those in some sticky tack on here so I could hold it with a gloved hand and rotate it all over the place, so that I could spray all the insides and outsides without, leaving paint shadows, because I have to move it around a lot in order to make sure that it all gets painted. But I knew there was a fresh pack of sticky tack here before I went on the... Okay. Yep, I knew I had seen it, okay, before I went on the Eclipse cruise, the Eclipse expedition. I was sure that there was this fresh pack of sticky tack here, and I couldn't find it. And now I just looked, and there it is. Just like, really? There it is, just sitting there. And I was going to cut out like little squares, like cut it off there and cut that into 4 little squares and put the prongs in so that I held it securely so that I could prime it. But I didn't, because I didn't look at where it was. That's how that worked. Yay. So on Wednesday, I got all these pieces prepped and ready to be primed, and I cemented together these bits, and these bits are going to take a lot of work. This is a fuel sump tank for the service module, and it has really bad seams on it that need to be fixed. And this is the nozzle of the rocket for the service module, which is a very important rocket because it gets into lunar, it fires off to insert the entire Apollo assembly into lunar orbit, and then it fires again to leave lunar orbit, and then fires again as a retro rocket to slow down entering the Earth's atmosphere. So this is an important piece. This has really bad seams on it and little rings around it that all need to be... It needs a lot of work. So I'm going to be spending a good deal of time filing and sanding this beast. I'm not quite sure what to do with the inside, because there's a seam on the inside, and it's like this valley that actually should be filled in and then carefully sanded. And I don't know, I might just spend a lot of time trying to do that, because even though this is going to be painted flat black on the inside, this obvious seam is going to show. And, it's no harm done if it isn't perfect. but I can make it look better on the inside because one could pick this whole service module up and look, right? Look on the inside. But yeah, so I'm going to use auto body filler. I have practiced with that. What is it? This piece? Yeah, this piece here. You can't see them quite as much because it's been primed, but I've tried 4 different kinds of fillers now. One is a plastic putty that was designed for models, and it doesn't work very well because it doesn't harden. Okay, and so it makes it, when you try to sand it, when I try to sand it, that plastic putty just pulls off. It just stays, it goes on liquid, but it stays rubbery, I'll say. And then I had some other plastic putty that was very hard to use, just really very difficult. So I had to give up on that. And then I used spackling compound, for walls, and that worked pretty well, but it had a different surface texture. And so when it was painted, especially if it was painted like with a metallic or something, it didn't work. But the auto body putty, yeah, it hardens nicely and sands well. So these 3 little circles here, those were indented circles, basically a molding flaw. Okay, a flaw in the molding process that I didn't want to show, because this edge here is going to be really obvious when this is inserted. This goes into the service module this way, and this is the outside rim. And even though it's on the bottom, one could look underneath and see that it's there. So I filled those in and sanded them down, and it's not perfect, okay, but it is pretty good. So most of these little bits, these 2 things are not. These 2 things are doors that go on this. But all of these little bits here go into the service module, and they're painted metallic. And I'm going to be painting them today, somehow or other. Okay, so the model instructions and the box top show, I'll just talk about this one. There's this platform thing, right? That these tanks are put on. This is which one this is. This is one of the either hydrogen. I think these are this is a hydrogen tank, I think, for the fuel cells. Just try to assemble this temporarily. I can't see up close there. So it goes. I can't even hold things today. This is going to be a day, right? Every day is a day, but some days are. This is a day. Okay. Anyway, this goes on like this, right there, sort of like this, and that's the tank. This is how it looks from the outside. If in fact, take this off so I can see what I'm doing. Alignment pins are tiny, 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 and I would not use them if they, in this case, weren't helpful. Okay, so there, finally. Okay, so there's this shelf. This is a piece of metal holding the tank in place. And the instructions just say paint the whole thing metallic, right? And the box top shows metallic. But what I want to try to do, and I'm going to try to do this, is I want the tanks, there's this tank, and then there's these oxygen tanks. They're in 2 parts that I need to cement together before I paint them. And they go on here like that. is what I want to do is paint the tanks a different, slightly different shade of metallic than the things in which they're attached. Why do I want to do that? Just for contrast. And the thing is that, I mean, this is easy. I paint that one color and this the other color, but on this side, it's part of the mold already. So what I'm going to attempt to do is paint the tank and then very carefully paint around the edges, okay, especially in the front here where it's going to very much show. Worked pretty well. Okay. And hopefully I get a nice clean line so it looks like this tank is like inserted through the shelf. And if I can pull that off, great. Okay, I'm going to start with this one actually. This piece up here, paint the tank and then that, and see if I can do it. And if I can do it, then it will work. If not, well, then it won't. The fuel cells have sort of the same issue. These things, get cemented in here, right? And then this goes on top. But they protrude through the bottom. And so the same thing here is that I would paint these the tank color, and then the rest of it the shelf color. And if I can make that work, great. And if I can't, then I'll just repaint the whole thing one color. So I'm going to be doing some painting today on these components of the service module. The other thing I'm going to do is pull this out. And this still has, I don't know if you can see it, but right down the side here, this is where the seam was. And part of it, like here, the seam is pretty well gone, but there's a tiny little bit of seam showing here. A little bit here. On the other side, I don't know, I can't tell. Yeah, it's kind of flat spotted where I was sanding it. I don't know if that's, see, the primer doesn't color it completely. Okay, it's a little bit translucent, so I can't tell if the seam is showing, if there's a little gap there yet or not. There's something there. I can still feel it with my fingernail. So I think I'm going to, I'm not happy with how those seams went. This was okay up here. This piece up here seems to have gone on pretty well. Can still see the seam here, but again, I can't tell whether that's because the primer is a little bit translucent or if the seam, that's pretty good. I think the paint will cover that. But this feels like there's still a little bit of a gap in there. The seam is just visible. Like it's a little flat spotted, but there's a little something here. I can feel it with my nail. So even though it's primed, I'm gonna still mess around with that a little bit. I'm going to use some of the auto body putty on here, there and there, and there. I can probably, the reason it's still there is this tiny little raised ridge right around the outside of it here, and I was kind of avoiding it when I was doing the sanding and the filling because I didn't want it to disappear. So I'm gonna mess with that. And I think I'll just leave that alone. The inside of this looks okay. This goes in here like this. Eventually this will be cemented in, but that's going to be very close to the last part. I'm not going to put this in until this is completely painted and just before I attach this part to that part. Hi, Hexarock. Oh, thanks. First time chat. Things are going okay so far. I haven't broken anything. I haven't spilled anything. The parts that I worked on yesterday look like they came out of the primer process pretty well. So, yeah. I'm going to be doing a little bit of seam filling and sanding today, just to try to improve the look of the escape rocket here, especially up here, where some of the, you can see it, the seam is showing a little bit too much here. And I'm going to start to assemble and paint these bits of the service module. So I'm going to set this aside on a paper towel so I don't mess it up more than I need to. Yeah, I'm going to be doing some painting today. And then I've got these two parts. This is the fuel sump tank for the service module. These seams on the sides need a lot of work. And this is the rocket nozzle in the service module. And this is going to need a huge amount of work to get it to be what it needs to be. So let me accomplish something. I'm going to accomplish taking rubber bands off of parts. But you can see, I mean, the seam on that is really bad. It's like a raised ridge. The way this was molded is that it got a raised ridge here on the outside and an indent on the inside. So it was, I don't know, just asymmetric when it came out of the mold. And this tank, at least it's holding together. You know, that's a good thing. I cemented some of these things in the past, and then I try to sand them, and they just break. So I think I'll work on this one first, because this is the easier of the two, the rocket mode. Well, actually, I'm not going to do either of those right now, because I want to work on these bits. And yeah, continuing to plug away on the Apollo. So this needs these. Let's start with something simple. Okay. The oxygen tanks from the service module come in two pieces that need to be cemented together like that. Okay. And that needs to set a bit before I actually end up painting them. So there's that. And then once they're cemented, they go into these little wells on this little platform. Yeah, I did that right. This has detail on it. Okay, it's got these little raised bits and some like tubes or wiring or something. And I'm really tempted to try to highlight those, like with a fine felt tip pen or something, so you can see them as more than just raised edges, raised spots on a painted surface. But I don't know how brave I'm going to be. I'm going to cement these together and let that set. All right. And then, as I was saying before, I'm going to try to contrast the color of the tanks. Like this is the hydrogen tank that's molded into the platform. I'd like to have it be a slightly different shade of metallic than the platform. So I'm going to paint the tank, okay, one color, and then I'm going to paint the platform the other color. And if I succeed in getting a really, really nice edge, if I succeed in that so that it looks like the tank is actually embedded in here and not just like painted on, then I will do the same thing with the bottom, okay? And it'll look like the tank is suspended. And I'm going to try the same thing with these. But if I can't pull this off, if I can't make it look as good as I want it to look, then I'll just paint the whole thing one color. So, yes, doing things today. Yeah. Let me cement these things together. I'll do the cementing part first, and then let those set in this box, and then do the painting of this next. I'm going to use the brush on cement for this. I think it's safe to do that. I also have like a needle nose applicator, but I think for this kind of thing, the brush on will work best. I just need to get it on there evenly with a very light coat. And I want to brush it on the surface, but from the inside, because I don't want to get it on the outside. When I primed these, there isn't any paint on here, which is good. So that they should be able to stick together nicely. I discovered with the new kinds of cement you get now, it's really different than when I used to build models, like in grade school and high school. Tube cement, I don't know if you remember tube cement. Are there any reliable and easy ways? I don't think so. I'm not a master modeler. I just sort of make things up as I go, and I sometimes read some books and things, but there's, like on here where they're really obvious, I think, for me anyway, it's easier to do them after they're cemented together, because then I'm getting at least symmetric on both sides. You can manipulate the parts before you cement them. As like a ridge on there, it would have been possible to sand that down, but I think for me at least, it's easier to do it this way. But I don't think there's any better way than cementing them together. The best scenario is if it's raised up above the surface, okay, like this one is, because then you can sand it down to the surface and hopefully not flat spot it too much. And for me at least, it's just a process of filing the really high points off and then sanding it and then polishing it. There are people online doing this kind of stream who actually know what they're doing. Okay, they're master modelers. They do it for a living. They might have a better way, but I don't think there's an easy way to take care of them. People who do this for a living probably have like Dremels, and I know there's these little miniature sanders. Okay, Oli Brager, has a really good stream, is a modeler, and he has these amazing little miniature power tools, and that would probably make it easier if one was really careful with them. But I haven't invested in those kinds of things, and so I just do it by hand. And I don't mind doing it. It's kind of like a nice mind-numbing, relaxing thing to do, is to just, plug away at it a little bit with really fine sandpaper and then polishing it with even finer grit sandpaper. But it's pretty boring to watch. I have to say that. So I apologize to the viewers who might be watching that, it is pretty boring. So these guys are cemented together. These are, they're kind of cute. Little hydrogen tanks. They go in here like this. I'm going to have to scrape off a little bit of the primer inside here and on the bottom of there to make sure it adheres. But the thing about this is, like I was saying, I want the tanks and the platform to be slightly different shades. And I thought, well, this is easy. These just sit in here. And then I turned it over and went, oh, God, no, here's the bottom of the tank. Looks like this is embedded. Anyway, there's that. So I'll be getting to this later today. After I tried this is the part that if I can make it work, then I'll have some confidence in what I'm, trying to do, the 2-color thing. And if I can't, then it'll be a single color. I'm going to have all of these different shades of metallic. My color chart around here anymore? The sigh. Sighing is a really good thing to do when you're older. Yeah, so I made this color chart ages ago. Highly sophisticated color chart made by painting chunks of paint onto cardboard or paper. So the steel, this dark color here, is this color. And I really like it for the rocket nozzles. It turns pretty good. I'm going to be painting the outside of this steel. But there's different levels of pigment in the basic metallic color, which you can kind of see. Okay, so I'm going to paint the shelving this dark aluminum color, and then I'm going to try to paint the tank either Dur aluminum or aluminum. I was thinking of Dur. Actually, the paint was made in Europe, so it's aluminium. Okay, it's dark aluminium and duraluminum and aluminium and white aluminium. I'm not sure the contrast between these two is enough to bother with, so I'm going to do dark aluminium and aluminium. Right, that's what I'm going to do. And the process involves finding the right paint. That's dull. So there's like 8 bottles there, right? There's 8 bottles of paint there, and the one I wanted was the 8th one. Go figure. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to paint the tank first, and then brush the darker color up to it around the edges. And if I can get that edge really nice and clean, then I'll say I succeeded in showing that the tank is a different color than the shelving. And then I have to decide what to do with these little control bits. I don't think they're painted a different color. I don't get out who. Hey, thanks for joining in. I am doing well, and I hope you are as well. I'm continuing to work on the Apollo model, and I'm working on some of the contents, the fuel cells, the oxygen tanks, and the hydrogen tanks that go into the service module. And I have made some decent progress on the escape tower. This has been glued and primed, and there's just some seam issues, little bits of seam issues that I want to deal with yet, and then maybe reprime it a little bit before I put the final color on. Okay, and then I need to paint these inserts here. These are rocket nozzles of some sort. I'm guessing that that's where this, which looks like it's part of the escape tower escape. Well, let's brainstorm some things. I might try to paint these flat black today. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this exactly. If I were really steady-handed, I would wait until the whole thing was painted glossy white and then paint the inside of that and come up with, because it's indented, a really nice clean edge. But what I'm going to do is practice taping the inside to see if I can paint it black first and then tape it and then spray paint it. I'm not sure. I want it to end up looking good. So, and you might say, well, if you want it to end up looking good, then you should have someone else do it, which would be fair. That would be fair, actually. Get the vortex spinner. There we go. Get the rave effect there. But it's really kind of surprising that if I just plug away at it very, very slowly and carefully, which is slowly is what I do. You know, when you're over 70, you just doing things slowly is a good idea. It's just a lot safer that way. That eventually progress gets made and things start looking okay. You know, homebrews are a lot more fun. They're more work. Our Dungeons and Dragons campaign, the one that streams 3 Sundays a month and has been going on well over a year now, is a homebrew. Our dungeon mistress made up the entire world. It's really an amazing kind of thing. But I would recommend homebrew. It's just, it gives you a lot more flexibility too. You know, if your players do something unexpected, and we do on our Dungeons and Dragons show, we hardly ever do what's expected. It gives the DM the opportunity to adapt. Okay. And you can always bring players back to sort of the storyline that you were working on later. Okay, I'm going to use a fairly large brush here. This isn't a huge surface, and this paint is very thin. It's made for airbrushing. Well, it does slow you down. Your homebrew is going to go slowly if you don't know where to start. But I used to be in management. I was like a healthcare administration, and I had these aphorisms that I called aphorisms for management. Instead of, a major book that gave you all sorts of hints about how to run things, I just said, well, it needs, what you really need are just one-liners. And one of them was, you can't finish unless you get started. It's kind of like, a takeoff on the old journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step kind of thing. But it just, which is like one way of saying it, but another way of saying it is you just need to get going. Why is there those bubbles? I'm not sure. And why is the color so inconsistent? So what are your players like? I mean, just what are like their personalities like? Not as players, but as characters. Because sometimes you can use the characteristics of your characters as a jumping off point for the campaign that you're going to do. I'm probably overbrushing this, but I'm trying to get the color uniform, and I'm brushing it up in this direction. Yeah, it's starting to look okay. So this needs to dry before I do anything else. But these metallic paints, they're made for airbrushing, right? So they're very thin, but even when you use a brush, they don't show brush marks very much, which is good. So is the 5-day? Ooh, thank you. My mug is way back here. I started putting my mug back there when I get started with the stream, because one day, this is a true story, I knocked it over, a foam mug of coffee, and there was a lot of liquid. So is it just the starting area that's going to be small, or the entire campaign in the small area? The standard starting zone. Woods are always fun because you have different terrain and stuff. You can hide behind trees. Things can jump out at you. But how about a canyon? That would be fun. You could start out. I'm just throwing out an idea. Why not? Because we haven't done it this way. Well, actually, we did. They were sort of like canyons underground, but it's almost you could have like a canyon, almost like a maze, which would be kind of fun. And the you could even have like dead ends in it. Being that the sticky tack doesn't. I'll try to level this. You could go through like a desert with rocks, kind of like the Petra area in Jordan, in the maze, and you could have dead ends and traps and ambushes. Oh, and like if you didn't want combat, you could even have puzzles. That would be fun, because you don't have to have combat all the time. We do a lot of our stuff is just like puzzles and things, to figure things out, and that's kind of fun for a player, to worry too much about getting killed or whatever immediately, but figuring out a puzzle is always a fun thing. But I'm in favor of like doing something that isn't a cliche. Might have to put 2 coats on this. The color is not coming out even. I think part of it is that when I've used this paint before, it's been like on minifigs, and so I've been painting dots. Okay, instead of surfaces like this, it's just like the little dots on a model. So it's different painting things. This isn't very big. Okay, you can't say this is a large surface, but it's big compared to most of what I painted before with these metallics. But of course, it's always, ooh, yeah, caves, the cave canyon, swamps are good. I'm going to show you. I'll show you a minifig. It's a very large minifig that I did some time ago. You might enjoy looking at. I think I'm going to second coat these. It's just not coming out very uniform. And there's nothing wrong with putting 2 thin coats of paint on things. If it's drying, it doesn't look bad. I'll have to come back to the other one and see what it looks like. But a second thin coat might help the appearance here. So I'm in favor of swamps. Wake up. Ah, hi. A raid, thank you. Cool. Come and join relaxing Apollo making with Dyson Dungeons. Since you're all just joining, I am going to tell you what I'm doing and show you some stuff. Why is this not covering? I am currently painting hydrogen and oxygen tanks for the interior detail of the service module of the Apollo model I'm working on. Yep. So this is the bottom of the hi, I'm doing well. This is the bottom of the hydrogen tank, and these are the 2 oxygen tanks, and these are for the fuel cells, which are these bits that are sitting here in this box. And this is the base of the escape tower, and this is the top that goes on here like that. I should show this to you. That goes on top like this without the dust and dirt on it. This has been primed and needs to be painted. Thank you for the follow. And when it's done, it'll look like that. Okay, this needs to be primed yet. This needs to be final coated, but there's still some seams I'm not happy with that I'm going to do a little bit of filling and sanding on. Most of this looks okay, except right up here where I was not aggressive in my filling and sanding because there's these tiny little slightly raised ridge around here that I didn't want to lose. So yeah, that wasn't well done. But this seam turned out okay. And the one up here turned out okay. So there we go. bog zombies. Oh, let me show this to you here. I did this some time ago. Let me put a white background. This is, yeah, I did this some time ago. It's like a big fungus monster. It's rising up from rhizomes in the swamp underneath. This is kind of fun to paint. Oh, nice. That would be fun. Yeah, so this is like a big bog monster. We usually don't meet them in swamps. We usually meet them in sewers. Our Dungeons and Dragons campaign spends a lot of time in the sewers. Sometimes warehouses, sometimes other things, but sewers seem to be the place du jour often. Let's see how this tank looks. This tank doesn't look quite like I want it to. I am going to put a second coat of paint on it. And you can see the paint oozed down onto the base underneath. Okay, and I'm going to try to get a really nice clean line around there with a slightly darker tone of the metallic paint. So let me re-stir this. Well, yeah, swamps are pretty good. Lizard temples, cool. So yeah, I think a swamp would be really fun. You can do great things in swamps, right? I mean, you can do quicksand, you can do pools, you can do trees that make like a maze that you have to go through. Yeah, I like the idea of a swamp. Well, with the new follows and everybody else, I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. I am a character in our Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and if you haven't caught it, check it out on YouTube, some of the past episodes, and maybe catch up with it when we stream it live chat on Sundays at 2. Okay, 3 Sundays a month. But this relaxing painting thing, no, I haven't seen that. Dungeons and Laser Swamps. I'll have to take a look at it. Yeah, so relaxing painting started because it started with dungeon tiles. So let me show you. I'm going to do an ad. I'm going to do a promo for Dice and Dungeons by moving some things out of the way. So we make these dungeon tiles. These are wood. They're not made out of wood. They're done in PLA on the printers back there. And relaxing painting started because after these were printed and then they were primed and painted, in a multi-step process. There was base coat of brown and then washed with a ink. Okay. And then the stucco parts put in. I like the giant dead fish. Wow, that's a lot of pieces in the set. That's really cool. Anyway, the cool thing about these is that these are one piece, the walls and the floor, and this is how they look after they're painted. Otherwise, they just come out black like this. But underneath this panel in the corners are ball magnets. Okay. Ball magnets. And the way it works is that because they all have them, they hold on to each other. So, some magnetized sets are just a magnet in the base and you have to put them on like a baking pan or something. But these actually adhere to each other and you can quickly rearrange your dungeon. And it holds together no matter what you do. And when you've got a lot of these, you can make a really elaborate sort of thing. We have set pieces too, of course, chairs and tables and bars and things like that. Operating doors, right? That's cool when you're going through, the warehouse here. You can hide back here. You can put your minifig here. And when the door opens, you can hide behind it and ambush whatever is coming through. Or worse yet, you can start out here and walk through and get ambushed, depending on how mean your DM is. Anyway, yeah. So relaxing painting started because these all needed to be painted in order to show up on our Dungeons and Dragons show. So there's this wooden one. I've got some stone over there that I'm not going to reach. Oh, yuck. Flowers and tiny little sucky mouse and probably venom or something. I'm not going to reach over because I don't want to knock things down. But that's how these work. This is an example of one of our stone ones with a built-in fire sigil. And this is part of a dungeon set that has a cauldron in the center. And the cauldron in the center has a little magnet in it, and a flame has a little magnet in it, so you can put the flame in or take the flame out, depending on whether it's flame on or flame off. But this is the kind of thing I painted a lot on the original Relaxing Painting with Dice and Dungeons when I was painting dungeon tiles. But then I ran out of dungeon tiles and not any minifigs. And so I was encouraged to pull out some of the models kits that I accumulated when I retired and never got around to building. And I did a submarine that I finished a couple of weeks ago before I went. They're very sturdy. I dropped it on the floor, on a concrete floor, and it held up. So that was good. Yep, I finished the submarine. So Submarine Wednesday, which was a tradition, ended. And now I'm just working on this Apollo. And this Apollo is going to take a long time because just like the submarine, the parts don't fit. Like this rocket nozzle thing just has really horrible visible seams that I'm going to be sometime later today spending a good deal of time trying to get rid of. So relaxing painting frequently has turned into relaxing filing and sanding. And this has turned into, I need a second coat of aluminum paint, or as they say in Europe, aluminium. Yeah, so now I'm just doing model kits until we need more minifigs for our D&D show. So this is turned into model kit building. The submarine was a lot of fun. It took forever. The submarine was one that the original kits came out in the 60s, and that's when I built the original kit. Not nearly as much detail in painting and things as this last time around. They never reproduced it, so the kits I built were pretty much what I had when I was a kid. Yeah, so I'm going to say that now. I bought 3 kits. I bought 3 submarine kits in order to make one submarine. And I have 2 kits left over. I'll just be honest, I used the best parts of each of the 3 kits for the submarine that I built, but there are enough parts. There are enough parts in those 2 remaining kits to build another submarine. And so if anyone out there is interested in having those 2 kits, I think those are bubbles. For the price of postage, which might be fairly high because they're kind of bulky and heavy. If anybody out there wants to have 2 Renoir cutaway nuclear missile launching submarine models, kits, which have guaranteed there's enough parts in those two kits to make one submarine. You might have to work hard. Some of the parts will need some work in order to be, in order to like fit, or just they need fixing. Like there's some control panels that didn't have enough plastic in the mold. So there are some parts that are not good. They're not great parts, but they're usable parts. Anyway, if anyone wants those for the price of postage, I'd be happy to send them off to you. Otherwise, they're fairly expensive on eBay. They're like $20 or $30 or something, even for a partial kit or a started kit. And some of them have been started. There's parts that are cemented together badly. There are some that are painted badly, but a patient modeler could get a submarine out of them. And if nobody wants them, that's understandable. I don't know what I'll do with them. I might just give them away, take them to a resale store or something. What is that? There's a lump there, like it's really obvious when it's painted. Oh, okay. There was like a hair, a brush bristle or something. Right. Second coat definitely improves the appearance of these tanks. So yeah, I'll just say that again. If anybody wants to try to tackle a submarine with parts that are less than perfect, the kits are free. It's just the postage needs to be paid. And if not, that's fine. I'll get them out of the basement somehow, because there is more than enough stuff in the basement here that needs to be moved on. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad I decided to second coat these. They're definitely improved in their appearance. Okay, well, that's going to be good enough for the moment. I'm going to have to give that brush an alcohol wash. That's a really good ambush. I like that. Very cool. Okay. I'm concerned that the sticky tack. Yeah. I really should learn how to airbrush, even little parts like this. But ages ago, I got an airbrush, right? Because I was going to do modeling kind of seriously. And I practiced with it and I was terrible. Just, it's hard to describe how badly it went, let's just say there was a lot of paint in a whole lot of places that weren't where I wanted it. Paint on my hands, paint on different surfaces, just a horrible mess. cleaning up took forever. So like changing colors, which is, that's a pretty standard thing to do, is change colors on your airbrush, took like half a day because I don't know what I was doing wrong. I watched, I didn't watch a video because it was before YouTube when I did this, which tells you something, right? um, yeah, but I read books, I read the instructions, I practiced with water, just to do it, and just awful. It was just an awful experience, and so I gave up. And now that's why I, do a lot of brushing, and why I buy aerosol cans of paint, which are really an expensive way of doing it, but like the primer on this stuff, you know. But it's what I need to do. Otherwise I can't get it done at all. Okay. So what I was talking about doing is making the platform in which these tanks are embedded a slightly darker color, a much darker shade of this aluminium paint. And I'm going to do it with this first. If I can get this tank, this edge to look good, so it's nice and smooth and even, um, and looks like one surface isn't painted on the other. Okay, if I can pull that off, then at least this tank, the hydrogen tank, will work. And if I can do that, then I'll have confidence to try the one. I should have painted those. Okay. Why not? These are the bottoms of these. These are the bottoms of these. These go into here like that. So I should paint them now, since I've got the paint out. I'm doing the same sort of thing here. I've painted down to the base, right? And then I want to paint the base up to the edges later. Yeah, I'm glad I talked to myself while I'm doing this, because then I can remind myself periodically what I'm trying to do. So the painting instructions and even the box top show that these tanks and the platforms in which they are embedded are all painted the same metallic color. And if I can't get this to work, I will end up doing that. Okay. I will end up having them be the same metallic color. It'll either be this aluminium color that I'm using now, or the darker color that I'm going to be using on the base, the platform thing. I'm not sure which, but if I can't pull off nice, clean, wonderful edges that look like that one that looks good, okay, if I can't do that, then I'll do it the cheap and easy way. With this metallic paint, just like for the submarine, I can always, alternate back and forth between the two. Like if I get this, like this one, if we're able to get this one like 95% good, and there's just one little blot somewhere, I can pull out the other color and just touch up back and forth, as long as I keep the layers thin so they don't get a paint buildup. Yeah, this is. Here, I'm going to use the itty bitty tiny little bitty brush and get the edge first, and then use this larger brush to paint the rest of it. And the base will probably need 2 coats as well, just like the tank did. trying to debate about whether I'm going to just do this, trying to focus. No, I'm going to try that. I'm going to use the head magnifiers, I think, for this purpose. Yeah, I'm going to do that. But, I can't get it done unless I try. And as I said, if it doesn't work, I'll just paint over it. At least I have that option. But it'd be pretty cool if I could do it, because I want the tank to, have some contrast with the shelf in which it's embedded, rather than just looking like it's a solid piece of metal. Thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. And thanks for the raid. I really appreciate all you guys dropping in. So I had the advantage of, being able to see this whole Apollo program when it first happened. It was an amazing thing. I think, if you think about, you can't even imagine how. I don't think if you're like under 50 years old, right? I don't think you can begin to imagine how primitive the technology was back then compared to what's available now. So the thing that surprises me is that this landing was in 1969, right? So it was like 55 years ago. Think about that, 55 years. So let's put that in perspective. The Wright brothers flew, in 1903? Okay. And 55 years later, it was 1958. So if you're any kind of airplane buff at all, you know that in 1958, okay, we were flying jet bombers, we had fighters, we had breaking the sound barrier, all that sort of stuff was happening, right? 1958, we were already ready to launch satellites into orbit. But compare the Wright Flyer, okay, the Wright brothers flew to the planes that we were flying in 1958. The same amount of time has passed between the Apollo program and now. And we missed 2001 Space Odyssey. We completely blew that. It was not given the pace of rapid advancement. Okay, so the Apollo program was in 69, right? In 2001 was 30 years later, right? So compare, to put it in aeronautic perspective, compare 1903 with 1933. Or better yet, compare 1930 with 1963. Any 30-year span up until about the 70s. Okay? Just the incredible advances that were happening quickly. So it was not inconceivable. Okay? It was not inconceivable. It wasn't this bizarre fantasy that, in fact, you could have Pan Am flights to a space station 30 years after the Apollo mission. That was not bizarrely impossible. It turned out to be impossible. It turned out to be that is not going to happen. Impossible. But at the time, given how, we went from blowing up Vanguard rockets on the launch pad over and over again in our failed attempt to get a satellite into orbit to landing on the moon in 10 years. Pretty much. We launched in 57. Yeah, and we went from putting a satellite into orbit into putting a person into orbit in just a couple of years. And yeah, the world did not progress. The world did not progress the way we sort of imagined it could. It's not perfect, but it's not too bad. I might be able to pull this off. The two color thing that I was trying to do here. This back here is invisible. No, it's really not too bad. I did not disasterize it. It is not a disaster. I'm gonna get the other bigger brush out now and finish painting the surface. Anyway, yeah. What turned out the thing that turned out to be surprising was how much we didn't do that we were imagining we'd be able to do back during the Apollo program. We spent a huge amount of money on the space shuttle. That turned out to be a bad idea. Other than the Apollo fire, which was on the launch pad, was really horrible and could have been avoided if people had thought through what they were doing. The only disasters we had in space were the space shuttle, right? Give this a second coat later. To paint the bottom of this color as well. So yeah, I mean, when 2001: The Space Odyssey came out, we knew it was science fiction, but we could imagine that by 2001, what was being depicted could be really close to being to happening. And although we've made well, I'll just say this, that I remember reading that when the Artemis program started, the return to the moon kind of thing, that they actually were trying to find the archives of the Apollo program, and even some of the original engineers of the Apollo program to try to figure out how they pulled it off, like heat shield technology. It's like, oh wow, that's an amazing thing that you did back then. I wonder how we can do it. Okay, well, that kind of worked. I'm going to take these guys off and put this guy on. And this is the same sort of issue here. Is I want to go around those, have a nice clean edge. Okay, these are the bottoms of those tanks. They protrude through the platform in which they're installed. second coat on those. It looked pretty good, but until I put the head magnifiers on, as is usually the case, the wearing of the head magnifiers, they should be called flaw magnifiers, honestly. Because things that looked good before I wear them end up not looking good afterwards. This is turning out to be, it's not perfect, but it's turning out to be good enough. Good enough, actually, that I'm going to go ahead with the two-tone look here. Be nice as if I could see better. Paint is really thin, and so getting to be uniform. Two coats ends up, when we end up with two coats, because the second coat covers up a lot of the sins of the first coat. It looks pretty good, except for things like little hairs and dust. And the need for a second coat on the tanks themselves. Second coat. Wow. Depending on the angle, it really gets some variations there that I don't want. Yeah, like I said, these head magnifiers, that's what they're called, even though my head stays the same. How many times have I made that pathetic joke? It's not even a joke. It's just pathetic. Yeah, these are flaw magnifiers. But the edges turned out adequate enough so that I can, I'm going to go with the 2-color scheme thing. Yeah. Let me see. I think I'll let this dry over break. This dry over break and then put the second coat on. And then I need to turn it over and do the other side. So this is going to take a while before it's finished, mainly because of the, the second coating issue and the, and wanting it to dry in between. So I can't see what time it is. 11:30. Okay. The clock over there is just hard to see. So I'm going to just keep knocking these around. Let's just turn those into a disaster. I'm going to get the other aluminum, plain aluminum, and I'm going to do the second coat on the bottoms of these because there's just some spots that weren't painted with the first coat. There's this little bitty brush. I'm just using the paint out of the bottle cap. I'm not going to pour any out. It's not that I have to fix the lines. It's just that it didn't coat evenly the first go. Sure. Yeah, I think this is okay. That the 2-color tone effort here is worth it. I think it's going to look good that way. I need a second coat of the dark aluminium color on these platforms, and maybe even a third before they have really nice even color. What I should do, I'm hesitant to do this, is I should look at these guys and see if they need touching up anywhere. Well, as a display model, I'm going to say that, as long as you don't put 2x head magnifiers on and get up within a couple of centimeters, a couple of inches of the model, if you don't do that, it should look pretty good. Kind of like with the submarine, if you don't put head magnifiers on, if you don't put magnifying glasses on, and the light's a little bit dim, it looks really, really good. If you put head magnifiers on and get this close, then all the flaws show and it's not as impressive. So that, when the submarine is displayed finally, it's going to be at a slight distance like that. Okay, so this is working. Oh, okay. Well, let's just keep doing things. Can I do this? This is painted this light aluminum color that I'm working with now. And this is the bottom of this tank. Okay, and that's going to need at least 2 coats. And since I've got like a half hour before break, oh, those are where I put my glasses. Yeah, the other thing is when you get older, you set things down and you look for them. And you can't find them even though they're like right at, I mean, like the old joke. There is the joke of, where are my glasses? They're on my head, right? At some point, that turns out not to be a joke. Okay, let me show you this other part. This one is going to be a little bit trickier. I'm not sure how to do this. Okay, these are the fuel cells. And the fuel cells, these parts fit in here like this. Okay, so the easy thing to do would be to paint these parts, the top part here, that silvery, the lighter color. So I'll cap this up while I'm not using it. And then the whole base, including these things, the darker color. But if you consider that this is not a holder, but is part of the fuel cell, then that should be painted the lighter color. So I'm not really sure what to do about that. I'm really not sure. The I know this. The easy part would be to paint these bits that cement in the lighter color and then paint the whole base, including these things, dark. I'm just going to do that. Trying to paint the insides and all of that's just going to be next to impossible. I'm not going to try to do the next to impossible, even though I've had some success here. The next to impossible is just next to impossible. Okay. I'm going to paint a second coat of the dark aluminium on these bases now. I need a different brush. This brush is okay, but ouch. I have all these brushes, most of which I don't end up using. Some of which I apparently just throw on the floor. Why not? This one might be okay if I can get it cleaned up. I'm trying to find like this. This too stiff though. The paint requires a really soft to work. Try this one. What I want is a wider surface. This is a little stiff. I'll try this one. If worse comes to worse, I can always put a third coat on. These metallic paints. I need another sticky tack holder. What I need is a way of basically that. I need that. Maybe I'll just do that. Maybe I'll put on a glove and just paint it like this. Why not? These dry enough? Yeah, this stuff dries quickly. That's not a good way to test your paint. Let's put a fingerprint in it, but it's still wet. That was not clever. Yeah, that's not a clever move. Anyway, I'm going back and forth between the dark aluminium and the aluminium. I have to paint the bottoms of these. And yeah, that'll be a thing too, because I don't particularly want to stick that in the sticky tack. I might. We'll see. I can always touch it up again if it's not a difficult spot. See how this brush works. This might be a good brush for this. We'll find out. The second coat is definitely looking better with a second coat. And then we'll see if I need a third coat or not. I'm not dry brushing it, but I'm trying to not get. What is seriously? That's one of the things that I tend to do is getting the work to and from the work is to bump it. And I did that there. I bumped it. And so I've got a flaw right there where it's going to show. So I'm going to have to get, when I get the light aluminum out, the regular aluminium color, I am going to have to remember to touch that up. I wiped off most of it, but not all of it. Jeez. Sometimes I just wonder what is going on with me. See, even when it's wet, that the next coat is making it look much more even. As I said, I may end up even putting a third coat on. Depending on how this looks once it's dried. Clean this. Then I'm going to get out the light aluminium again. Okay. I'm going to have to give this a rinse in the alcohol bath here. This brush worked really well, but it absorbed a lot of paint. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to get the regular aluminium out. I'm going to touch up that spot where I blopped it with the dark color because I was not being careful. Okay. And I am going to paint the bottom of the hydrogen tank by actually sticking it on my finger like I showed you before, because why not? It worked. I'm using a different well each time because I don't want to like get bits of semi-dried paint out. And during break, I'm going to just clean these wells. I'm going to clean them out. There. This is a non-professional way to do this. Why did I do that? Because it wasn't holding well enough. Yeah, don't try this at home, kids. This is like, no, this is not the right way to do this. Okay, it just really isn't. But I don't have anything else at the moment. It's going to require at least 2, maybe 3 coats. Yeah, did I think this through? What am I going to do with this while it's drying? I can't take it off. I'm going to have a hydrogen tank on my finger now for some time. Because why not? I mean, why not have a hydrogen tank on your finger? You know, that reminds me about things in tanks, right? Is it Esso? There was some gasoline that advertised that it would put a tiger in your tank, which, when you think about it, is really not a good thing. You know, tigers are endangered, right? So why would you want to confine a tiger to your gasoline tank? And besides that, tigers don't. I mean, their octane rating. I imagine they're just really bad. Tigers are really bad at being auto fuel. So I know it was like a metaphor or something, right? Tiger was supposed to be like energetic, and being a tiger was a thing back then. Being incoherent, I'm resorting to just saying a thing. Okay, well, this is going to need definitely 2, possibly 3 coats before it looks good. Basic, what I'm doing is I'm brushing it here, maybe a little too much, but I'm trying to get there's striations in the metal with the brush, right? Not really brush marks as much as almost a textural thing. I'm trying to get it to be in the direction of the tank, vertical kind of. And Also getting little bubbles out. The bubbles, if I just brushed it carefully the first time. Yeah. Now I've got a hydrogen tank on my finger. Yay. Is this going to need another coat? This is the one that really matters because it's a big flat surface. Yeah, it does. It's just it's close but not quite uniform. Different orientations. You can see there's just spots that I just need to I need to be careful to rotate adequately. I don't want to put too many coats on because then I'm going to start getting buildup. It's going to be like there's little brush marks and stuff on it that are starting to show. But it will need a third coat. Knowing that, when I do the other sides, I probably can do it in two. But I'm, experimenting as I go. These are the bottoms of the platforms. So you'd have to tilt the model up and rotate it to look at the bottom. This is my hydrogen tank symbol. This whole process is being slowed up by only having two of these sticky tack things. I want to put the third coat on these. Maybe I should do that before break. So after break, I can actually come back and do the other sides. Eyes really quickly. I think I can. Maybe I'm condemned to putting a second coat on this. Yeah, I mean, it's stuck on my finger. What can I do? Except just say, oh, yeah, there it is, stuck on my finger. Isn't that fun? This brush is better than the other one at smoothing the paint. I need to be careful, though, because it tends to form bubbles. As I'm learning here, if I ever build like an airplane, these paints are made for airplanes. Is I definitely need to figure out how to use a dry airbrush again because you can't brush it on a surface as big as this even and get a nice, smooth, even look. Okay. And an airplane wing is way bigger. So if I ever do an airplane and I want to paint it aluminum or aluminium, I will definitely need to learn how to use an airbrush. Because as I said over and over and over again, I bought an airbrush. It was like 10 years ago, right? And just one horrible mess after the other. I don't know what I was doing wrong. I followed the instructions. I read books. And it just came out. It was just awful. The surface was not uniform like an airbrush is supposed to make it. I got paint all over my hands. I couldn't figure out how to clean it, change colors. Obviously, was doing like everything wrong. There we go. The old inevitable piece of dust. Little hair. Two coats on this is looking okay. Not bad. Well, I guess that was lucky. It fell off and it landed like that. And I don't know if it marred the surface or not. I'll have to look at it later. But I'm going to take that gift and set it aside and worry about it later. I'm going to put a third coat on these though. And then take a break. And then after break, I'm going to come back, do the other sides of these multi-coats and probably actually be able to assemble them. Then I need to do the fuel cells, but I need these sticky tack things in order to do that. The sticky tack things to hold them when I paint them. Doing is trying to make sure I don't get like a ridge of paint on the edge here. Was able to by doing this fix the flaws, the obvious flaws that I was seeing in the paint. Okay, now see how, geez. How does this one look? This one came out okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you can see it. You can see that there's the tank Okay, the tank is lighter than the platform, and it's not a huge contrast, but it's enough so that it looks good. I like how this came out. I'm glad I decided to try this, and it looks like it's a success for both the hydrogen and the oxygen tanks. The fuel cells, um, the better part of valor with the fuel cells is that the base will be painted this dark color, including these bits, okay, all of this, and that the tops will be the lighter color. But I'm going to need the sticky tack thing, or maybe I'll use some two-sided tape and a piece of cardboard. I'm going to do that before this all needs to dry. That needs to be not touched. Good. Made a mess. So during break, these are going to dry, and I have to paint the other sides, the tops, okay, which need to be pretty nicely uniform. Um, what I'm going to do with these, rather than use the sticky tack, I'm going to just put some tape on here. Get some two-sided tape and attach them that way. I'll be right back. Getting two-sided tape. Put this to 3 pieces. One for each. Get a little pointy thing. I have to get a little pointy thing here, a nail, and peel off the cover. That one came off easily. The rest of these are not going to be so cooperative. What I find is you need to kind of puncture it and then pull it off. That's a messy one, but it'll still stick. Where's the last one? There we go. The last one is going to give me a fight. So I'm just going to stick these on here like this. The advantage of this versus the sticky tack is that it doesn't climb up on the sides, and so I can get the paint all the way down to the bottom. And I probably should put this away, but I'm not. I'm just going to stick it here on the work surface so it's in the way later. Okay. So far this is turning out okay. You can see it here, how the bottoms of the tanks, are a lighter color than the shelf on which they're attached. The metallic is not, it's not perfect. It'd be better if it had been dry brushed on, but airbrushed, I mean, but I didn't because I couldn't. This one turned out pretty well. That's the top. Oh, that's the top of the tank. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Oh. As I rotate it, I'm seeing a non-uniformity there. sometimes I should just leave well enough alone, but then I don't, you know. Again, display your models in fairly dim light, and don't let anyone get closer than 18 inches from them, and they will look amazing. Right? That's a hint. That's a secret of your I am not really good at this model maker painter is fairly dim light and at a distance, and everything will look way better than if you put it under bright light and let people get really close. Especially don't let them use magnifiers. So after break, I want to paint the other sides of these. I want to paint this, both sides. Okay, so it'll take some time. I want to see how this turned out. My thimble. I want to paint these. So just a whole lot more of aluminium painting. And yeah, we'll just see how this goes. If this goes pretty well, I'll actually be able to assemble these things. Okay, and these parts then of the really like the way that looks, but I'm not sure I can do this. Should I just leave it alone or not? No, it's not any worse for wear. Let me give this a thorough cleaning. So I'm going to clean these off. This thing, get some different rinse water because I don't want the metallics are building up. And after break, I'll come back and continue painting these bits, top and bottom, maybe even getting some assembly done. And then, depending on how much time is left, I might start working on the seams of the parts that are cemented. What I can guarantee is that on Monday, on Relaxing Apollo with Dyson Dungeons, I can pretty much guarantee that I'm going to be doing a lot of sanding to get rid of seams. I'm not going to finish those today. I can tell by the way this is going. So I'll be doing a fair amount of sanding. You're going to be seeing relaxing seam amelioration on Monday. But for the rest of today, I'll be doing more painting. Yes, we're actually doing relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeons today on Friday. I'll be back in somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes. Thanks for joining in so far, and hope to see you after break. Okay, well, break is over. I'm back. Time to do more stuff. I'm going to start by looking at my thimble here. And I am going to say that it survived the tumble that it took off my finger. I'm going to see if I can be somewhat efficient here. Those are painted. So these can come off now. I need to paint this side. This is going to be painted that dark aluminium color. And as is this. These three are dark. these are light. Builds. I think it'd be safe to stick it on here. I hope so. It has to be painted top and bottom. And paint this side first. Do the same thing with this as I did with this. I'm going to put a little tape down to hold it and then paint this, and eventually I'll turn it over and paint all the rest of this. But first, I know I didn't put it away. I never put things away. There it is. Always put things away, put it back where they belong. That way you can find them when you want them later. Those are all good things to do that I haven't been doing this entire series of whatever. There. Okay. So I've got a whole lot of stuff that needs to be painted this dark aluminium color. All three of these. And they're going to need at least 2 coats, possibly 3. So I'm going to get that started. And I'm going to paint the tops of the fuel cells, the plain aluminium, the lighter color. And those will need at least 2 coats, possibly 3. I clean this up. And I can say that if everything goes okay, I should be able to assemble these today. And then I can start working on the seams on these other bits. These are a little more than usual here. Got a lot of surface area to cover. I'm going to start with this one. Is that not holding? Weird. I mean, it's primed, but it's a residue from the sticky tack? Maybe. Okay, I'm going to have to do something here. I think what's happened is that there's some residue from the sticky tack on here, and it's keeping the paint from adhering well. Because this was primed. I'm going to you should keep that in mind, huh? That you could end up, there's just, yuck. That was not good. Okay. I have to keep that in mind now. I haven't really done, painting on 2 sides kind of thing using the sticky tack as the holder, but it's leaving a residue that's keeping the paint from adhering right. Take it off of there. I'm just not going to, and then it marred the surface. I'm just cleaning them with a little alcohol here. Hopefully that will do the job. It was very, that was really, that was unfortunate. It's going to hold them, I guess. I don't know what else to do. But that was not good. And, usually when the sticky tack is there, it's on an unpainted surface like the bottom of a minifig or something. But when I turned it over and started painting, hopefully this will work better, it was just like not adhering there. Now the surface is clean. This brush is giving me bubbles. Okay, well, one thing that's happening for sure is that I'm going to have to clean some of the paint off right around the edge of this because that's a place where I need to cement something on. Painting over a place where I need to do some cementing, which in an ideal world would not be happening. But this world that I'm in at the moment is not ideal. Mm-hmm. I got paint on my thumb. Somehow I got paint there. And I definitely don't want it there if I'm going to be holding things, right? Okay. Well, let's just say that since break, this things have gone from, things are going okay to, exasperation. Use the sticky tack. Maybe I'll use the two-sided tape thing on this too. Just the tops of those, and I can always touch those up if I need to. Well, at least I caught it right away. And I'm probably avoiding the same situation happening here. I'm just going to put those little bits there. And then, get stuff in the way, make a mess, that kind of thing. So this piece here is the top of the oxygen tanks, I'm going to try not to get too much paint inside the wells there. I want to paint the inside of the rim because that might show a little bit. And I'm making a mess. I'm just going to scrape that off because, again, that's another one of those things where there's going to be cementing. I'm definitely going to be careful to not have to do anything really delicate here this afternoon after break because for whatever reason, things I'm losing my touch here. And it hasn't gone badly. I mean, nothing has happened that can't be handled, and make it look okay. But just things are happening. It picks up the detail of those little wires and things pretty well. I had given some passing thought to trying to highlight the little texture there with like a fine felt tip pen or something, but it's a passing thought because it would not work. It would be bad. I would get black ink all over everything, and then I'd have to repaint it, but I couldn't repaint it because the ink dissolves in the paint. It's that kind of thing where it starts to go bad and it just continues to go bad until it goes really bad. So I'm giving that serious not thought because I know better. I know better than to try to do something that can't really be done. Scraping a little bit of paint off there to give a nice surface for cementing. That's something I can do. Let me turn this around. This is the front edge here. Again, this brush is really good for getting the paint on the surface, but it leaves bubbles. So I have to brush all those bubbles out. I had that problem once. I was trying to varnish a tabletop, and I tried. It was like 3 different brushes. This varnish was supposed to be easy to use, doesn't leave bubbles, doesn't leave brush marks, nothing like that. And it didn't matter what I used. I used 3 different brushes. Finally, it was just the nature of the veneer on the surface, I guess, that didn't allow it to set. And so I ended up just using oil and oiled the surface instead. And every year or two, I have to re-oil it. But at least that was better than having the tabletop full of little circles from the bubbles. Yeah, I hadn't painted this yet, so the edges aren't done. I'm not painting that little bit in the back because that actually gets cemented in. It actually gets cemented into the inside of the service module wall panels. I'm not sure if these sides will show either, but I'm painting them just in case. Needs to dry a bit yet. That auto body filler actually worked pretty well. There were little circles here and here. You can barely see that one, and this one disappeared. So after being painted on and primed, yeah, that's okay. So while those are drying, clean this out and get the regular aluminum color and paint the tops of the fuel cells. And then go back and do a second coat on these guys. And then maybe a third if necessary. And then I can do probably some assembly. So what I was saying, before the break, during my mumbling about stuff monologue, is that in the 1960s, the Apollo program really started getting going, like in a public way, like in 65, 66. The first Saturn ones, the ones, not the Saturn V, but the ones with the less powerful boosters. I think the first one was launched in like 67. And then the Saturn V came later. I mean, we don't think about it, but, Apollo 1 was that horrible launch pad fire during one of their rehearsals, one of their practices. And they had to change the whole atmosphere on the inside. It was pure oxygen, which turned out to be a really bad idea. Oxygen doesn't burn, but it's the oxidizer, what makes other things burn. So that's why the fire was so intense and hard to control. So that was a real tragedy. But I was talking mainly about how little seems to have, at least in terms of space exploration and things. It was like, well, we got to the moon, and now we don't need to do that anymore. Now we're planning to go back again. I don't know why. I mean, because there were really good reasons not to bother. But there's all these fantasies now about permanent moon bases and mining the moon and that sort of thing, which seemed really possible back in 1969 and 1970, because that's what gave rise to like the 2001 Space Odyssey, when there was a permanent or semi-permanent moon base, right? And they found the monolith there as they were digging. And, given the pace of how rapidly space exploration, rocketry, and all of that developed between basically 1957 and 1969, and how rapidly like aeronautics had advanced during that same time period, right? It looked possible that the 2001 Space Odyssey might not have been too outrageous. And of course, it turned out to be outrageous. You know, here we are 55 years later, much less like 30 years later. We don't have any permanent base on the moon. We don't have Pan Am flights to the space station, tourist flights. We don't even have Pan Am anymore. I don't know. The world just got less after the 1960s and the Apollo program and everything. I've been reading a history book by Hobsbawm. I grew up during that time, but wasn't fully aware of all the implications of everything that was happening. But the golden age, which was from like 1947 to like 1957, really was an aberration. Full employment, good wages, not very much inequality, rapid technological advances. It was also a bad time. It was also a time when we decided that poisoning the planet was a really good idea. Pollution was rampant and there wasn't any accountability for it. So, upsides and downsides, right? But there really was a diminution of the entire world economy. Kind of right about the time that the Apollo program was wrapping up. And we're still living in that period. Anyway, it's just interesting. It was interesting living through it and then reading about it from a historical perspective. You don't think about, I was living in history. I mean, back. It happens with time. It's like when, this was a while ago, like 15 years ago now, our son was graduating from college as an undergraduate. The woman he was dating at the time was in women's studies, right? Well, when we were in college, there were women's studies was something you mumbled about and grumbled about and talked about. Maybe that's something that we can have. Okay. It's like, you were there when this happened and this happened. I read about that in my history books, my history of women's studies, and that made us feel great. We were living history. But it was an interesting time growing up then, in the 50s and the 60s, because all the time there was just something new and amazing in technological progress and technological bad decisions. And then that just all really stopped, it seemed, in the 80s. And depending on your politics, you can come up with various and sundry reasons why that might have been. But I won't get into that because I don't know, your politics. I don't want to get my audience upset, so I'm not going to get into it. Okay, well, I'll need another coat. Now I can go back to the dark aluminium. But I just have to say it was an amazing time when new things incredible things were just happening all the time. Some of which were, stunning and outstanding, and some of which you look back and you go, what in the world were we thinking? But I can say for certain that the progress, related to aeronautics and space, air and space, were truly, truly, truly stunning at that time, during that period of time. When we had things like that we don't care to replicate, but I'm not sure we even could. Like the SR-71 and the X-15. Oh my. Okay, obviously this is leaking. Whoa. You have to excuse me. I need to clean this up. This bottle is not sealed. Really, I have to. There. As I was shaking it, it's all over the place. I need to wash this off. I'll be right back. You get to watch paint dry. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that, but yeah, this bottle was not sealed as I was shaking it, and it just got all over. Luckily, it didn't get on my clothes. You got to see just a little spill. There was a time. This was a truly exciting disaster. I was using the vortex spinner thing there, to stir what was a wash, very thin paint. And as I had it on there, the top flew off. I mean, it just came loose, and there was just wash everywhere. It was it was an epic mess. So this wasn't that bad compared to that. That was just incredible. It was just everywhere. Just kind of splashed out. It was worse than spilling my coffee mug because it was paint, you know. And yeah, so this thing that got this splashed on me just now was not that bad compared to that other event. Okay, let's do this one. Put out way more paint than I needed. Just so I get kind of an even an even streakiness and get rid of the bubbles, because there's a lot of bubbles. And by painting this out, brushing this out in kind of like this radial pattern, that the net effect will be, that it looks okay. Seems to be covering this pretty well this time. And it's a little streaky, but depending on the light, it's not too bad compared to it's not too bad compared to bad. Saying it's great. Airbrushing would have been better, but I will keep reminding everybody I cannot do that. Someday I will try again, and maybe I'll develop a skill that I wasn't able to have before. You can't hear those, I guess, because the microphone filters out extraneous noises and does an excellent job of doing that. The phone keeps ringing. We are getting majorly spammed today. Maybe it's the end of the month quota for all the spam callers, right? We're people who are trying to make a living doing cold calls, trying to get people to give them money for things that they shouldn't. That can't be a good living. That can't be a good way to live. I mean, we find it annoying, but there are people actually trying to live on the money they make by doing that thing that we find really annoying. I mean, that doesn't make me any more likely to want to buy whatever it is or give them my social security number or whatever it is they're trying to do. Doesn't make it any more likely for one to do that, but I do have some sympathy for people who are trying to make a living doing that kind of thing. Well, it's kind of streaky, you can see the streakiness on there, an effect that you would not get with an airbrush. But unfortunately, I don't have that. So yeah, it's coming out mostly okay. There's a streak here. Like I said, make sure that when you display your models, you do it in moderate to dim light. Okay, moderate to dim light, and keep your audience at least 18 inches away. That's one way to enhance the appearance of your models. Can't do it with skill. Do it with lighting and distance. What? This time around, it got like roughness on the surface. I don't know. I can't do anything about that unless I like sand it down and repaint it. Maybe in the dim light of display, it won't show that much. Now I need to put a second coat on these guys. That's good. I'm not splashing all over the place this time anyway. Yay. Yeah, I might need a third coat on this. The second coat always makes it look a little better than the first coat. Maybe soft bristles, a good width, leaves bubbles. How did I get paint on my thumb? Look at that. I do that. I don't know. Um, Maybe it would show up if I did like a replay or something of how did I get paint all over my thumb. That's happened in the past. It's like I go to clean up and I look at my finger and I know this finger wasn't anywhere near the painted surface. It just wasn't. It couldn't have been, right? But there it is, somehow or other, a big spot of paint. And all I can think is, well, I'm lucky. At least it didn't get all over the other color, right? At least I didn't touch it to the painted surface. Second coated. Anyway, those of you watching this who know things about modeling and painting would say, you should have just airbrushed that. The surface would have come out more uniform. You wouldn't have bubbles. And I would say, yep, indeed, that is what I should have done if I were capable of doing it. But there's some things before I can make very much more progress on this. I mean, besides just doing things like getting rid of seams and priming and redoing the seams and, that kind of back and forth stuff to try to make the surface look good. Okay. In addition to that, I don't have the right color for the insides of the panels. The service module panels and the panels that open up for the LEM holding area, the painting instructions say light green. The box top color, where somebody really knew what they were doing when they put the model together. Okay. And they had a really good photographer. It's sort of like a yellowish green, kind of. I don't have that color, so I can't paint the insides of the panels. And I need to search. I need to do a search to find it. Some of these things, inside panels and parts of the lunar excursion module, are painted gold. And I've got gold paint, but I need spray paint because I'm covering large areas. So I ordered some. You know, it's like when I was looking for the white to paint the outside of this. Um, it's not like pure white. It's so whatever. So I bought 5 different cans of white, different shades of white spray paint from one of the paint manufacturers. One of them will do. I'll be painting, doing some final coat painting on this part, the escape tower rocket. Actually, maybe even next week, if I can get the seams cleaned up. There's just a couple of spots where the seams are showing more than I want them to. Dink around with that for hours, maybe prime it again, and then do the final painting. So it seems like, just like with, even more than on the submarine model, where there weren't that many seams. Okay, there were lots of really tiny parts that had little bits of sprue on them and flashing, just lots of flaws in the manufacturing process. There weren't that many seams that needed to be filled and sanded, but on this model, there are quite a few. Yeah. Just see how this goes. I'm trying to get the bubbles out. I seem to be plagued with bubbles here. Okay, the second coat looks like it covered pretty well. It looks like I just painted the wrong one. This one's not good at all. I have to do this. Paint this one. Where's my? There it is. These two look like they're okay. This one needs work. And I'll go back and check the dark aluminium shelves, the things into which all of these are attached, to see how the second coat did on those and whether they need some more touching up or not. And if they look okay, I might go ahead and start doing some like assembly, right? Why not? These things I'm doing now, that I'm painting aluminium, these are supposed to be fuel cells. That, whatever I did there, that was not good. It didn't work. But these are getting close to being done. I can keep the bubbles out. I've been airbrushed these. This would have been done like 10 times over already. Hang, ridge overhang there that I need to make sure I'm getting under it. But these are looking okay. It's like a bubble there or something. Didn't like it. So those are the shiny fuel cells. And when those dry, eventually they'll dry. They will get inserted into the caps there on the other side. On the other side of this, which needs to be painted. So I need to do that. So this is pretty much done. Just to show you what will happen, these get put here. Get put like this. They get cemented into those little wells, and I'll be able to do that later, a little bit later. The bottoms of these are okay. Now, yeah, I mean, they just go in there. I'm just going to put cement on the unpainted little bits right in the center, and then hold it down, and then those will be done. I'll set this here in the interim. This one looks like this one's going to be finished, and that's this thing here gets cemented there. I'm going to need to clean up just a little bit of the paint around the edges. And maybe I'll do that now while I'm thinking about it. It's just a little, like right at, just around the edge like this, so it doesn't show, but that there's a place for the cement to grab onto. Okay, because otherwise it'll try to grab onto the paint. Yep, and I bumped it with the knife. Now I'm going to have to touch that out. Seriously, I can't believe that. Such a ditz. Always get the angle right. Always try to get the angle right, so that when you're doing this, you're not, I probably should do it from this side, right? Yeah, I messed it up. And it's in a part that shows, so I'm going to get this dark aluminium color. And it's right up here in the front. Okay, right up in here. And I scratched it. I shouldn't have scratched it. But in a little while, I'm going to cement the bottom of the hydrogen tank. Now I'm going to turn this over. And I need to paint all of this with the dark aluminium color. And I'm just going to have to hold it. I don't know, maybe that'll hold. Yeah, that'll hold well enough. Okay. That's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to get some fresh paint here. There's a lot of surface area that needs to be covered. What's happening here? Oh, never mind. That's not an issue. You get these out of the way. Yeah, I should be okay. I should be able to do some assembly here sooner than later. Still don't know how I got paint there. Got paint here too. Splashes. A good model maker and an expert painter would not have paint all over their hands. Okay. They would somehow, I don't know how, but they would somehow be able to do this without ever getting paint on themselves. I don't have that ability. Is that residue? I'm getting some residue from the sticky tape. Hopefully that will, in the second coat of things, that will get covered, get paint all in these little nooks and crannies down here so that there isn't any, I don't want any white spots. But I'm also not too terribly worried about brush marks and stuff down here. It's just you can't allow white spots. Get the paint down in the upper part of this rim. Because that's going to show. And then I'm getting paint on the part that needs to be cemented, and that's not a particularly good thing to be doing, but it is one of those things that is. This is often the case. Sometimes the most difficult the one that's giving the most trouble is right at the end. I don't know if you've had this issue, but I know that. Okay, so you're taking apart. Let's just say an old picnic table, right? So you got an old picnic table, and you want to get rid of it. So one way to do that is to take it apart, right? And then bundle the wood off one place and the metal the other way, and say it's like screwed together, right, with bolts. It's bolted together. So put a little WD-40 or something on the bolts to loosen them because there's some rust and stuff on them. And it's coming along okay. Maybe there's like 12 of them on the picnic table. And then number 7 gives you a little bit of trouble, and you go, okay, but then it loosens up and comes off. And you're almost done, and you're kind of tired, and there's hardly anything. There's just like one bolt left, and that bolt decides to break. The head of the bolt just snaps right off, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens. Which sometimes just the most difficult part, not even necessarily the most difficult theoretically, but just the most difficult thing in practice turns out to be right at the end of something when you say, oh, I am finally finished, and then you're not. This is being a little bit like that. This is one of those things that, in retrospect, probably should have been done first. Well, maybe not first, because at first the technique hadn't been developed yet. Which brush should I use, and what should I do about the bubble and that kind of thing. But definitely not last. Anyway, it's last. So I'll try to get the bubbles off. And then, this will get second coated, and it will look better after the second coat. Yeah, the theme of today's rambling, I won't call it a monologue, but the rambling on about things has been, why haven't we been able to accomplish in the last 55 years what we were able to accomplish, relatively speaking, in like 15 years back in the 50s and 60s? Part of it is just the will. Like, why? Why bother going to the moon again? We did that. We even drove a golf cart around on it. That was great fun. We bought a bunch of rocks back, so some people were able to make a living looking at moon rocks. And good for them. That was, helped them stay employed. Not too many. I mean, not very many people could make a living doing that, but some people did. But the promise of 2001: A Space Odyssey never came to be, that's for sure. No, this isn't good. I don't know if I'm over brushing it or if the paint's starting to dry, but I'm getting that not smooth surface look again. And I don't want it there. That's right up in front. I can get the bubbles off and then be patient and do a second coat. It'll be okay. So this wasn't very much, but it took a while to paint because, I'm just dealing with irregularities in the application and bubbles and trying to get it to look smooth by using a brush. When this dries, we'll put a second coat on it. As I get near the end of the stream here, I can feel that I'm starting to lose focus. And even doing painting like this, could end up in regrets and tears, right? So I'm going to stop messing with it. Just stop now. Okay, there I am, stopped. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come back and put a second coat on. While I'm waiting for that to dry, rather than just sitting around not doing anything, I'm going to pull out the oxygen tank section here, the holder, and install these, put these in. I'm just looking at them for uniformity and flaws. I'll just use this stuff. I was saying earlier, the model cement I used when I was a kid was, I don't need that much on there. It was tube cement. And the thing about tube cement more than anything else was strings, like these spider webs, huge spider webs of sticky cement that got onto everything. This stuff is more like a contact cement. It's weird that way. It doesn't work very well if it's applied to just one surface. Put that down. Yeah, well, they're not contacting each other. That's good. Yeah, okay. Well, that turned out okay. This is what it looks like now. And I'm glad I did that with the different colors. What is this? Just take this tiniest little bit of paint there. Okay. So I'm glad I did it with the two different colors because the tanks show better. I mean, if they were all painted one color, it wouldn't be quite so cool. And they show on the bottom too. There you can see they're so very like a color. Seriously, Man, okay. Obviously, that did not hold. Try again. And then I'm not going to mess with this anymore. I don't want to move it or touch it or anything. To just be there. I'm going to put it in here with the paper towel. And that'll be that. Okay, while I'm doing that, then I've got this one as well. And this thing goes here. This is really hard to position, I have discovered. And I have to be careful with it because if I get cement on it and don't get it right, it could just smear all over the place. Try. It has to happen. I mean, it has to go on eventually. I'm looking for the good side. This is the good side. Mm-hmm. I'm going to try this one. Let's see if I can do it with this. This grabs a little better. I'm going to try to apply this around the edge. Okay. Yeah, I know I'm getting near the end. I'm getting the hand cramp syndrome here. Doing. Damn it. If it doesn't align just right, it slides. It messes up the paint. And I did. So I'm going to have to do some touch up on this after it dries. But that's how the tank looks. And I need to just not mess with it. But just around the edges, you can see You can see where the cement kind of caught back here. And I do need to touch that up, but not immediately. Okay, so that turned out, despite the, oh God, really, what a mess. It almost was a disaster. But it turned out to be almost, but not quite a disaster. Okay, it's time for second coating this now. I think I have just enough time. Just enough time to get the second coat on. Did it again. Dang. Oh, I know that thing is tight. Okay, well, yuck. This thing is spitting paint. Just splashed. Okay, yeah, I get near the end of the stream and things start happening. This is not the time. I will remind myself, this is not the time to try to do anything fancy. This is barely the time to try to do anything at all. So I want to get this paint on here without too many bubbles. This is inside there. And so this is the color I need to do the touch up on the one that I just had a disaster with, you know, where the thing's splooshed a little bit. What happened here was there's like a little paint buildup on the bottom, and I'm trying to get it off without creating too much of a textural problem. It's essentially like a little bubble. This isn't looking bad. This is coming out kind of okay. Things. These are going to hold the fuel cells, these things up there. I'm not going to cement these in today, I don't think. This paint to dry. Take a chance of messing it up. And as I was saying, as I get near the end of the stream, I'm not. It isn't that I lose focus necessarily. It's just that it's a little less steady. Just things are more likely to go slightly wrong. There. That is or why. It's right in the front. I think I got it off. At least it's minimized. I could just say it was a bad weld, right? I could just say that. I think that'll do. I need to look at this and see if I can very, very delicately fix these bits. Cement messed up the surface of the paint. I think that'll look okay. It's going to be like this, way down at the bottom. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be what it is. I'm going to put this in here with a paper towel. This is my parts storage box there. Clean these brushes. I want to thank everybody who has joined in today, especially all the people who rated earlier in the first half. Thanks so much for doing that. Thank you for becoming followers. If you like Dice and Dungeons, whether it's this, the relaxing painting, not so relaxing painting, messing up cement, adventure with Dice and Dungeons, or even more to the point, if you can become a friend of Dice and Dungeons, Dungeons and Dragons show, please do so. Our show is really, really, really good. It really is. You should check it out. Go on YouTube, get one of the older episodes. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you will really enjoy it if you were to watch and listen. Watch on YouTube or listen on as a podcast. You can become a follower here on Twitch, and you can go on YouTube and become a sponsor, I think it is. And you can even go to patreon.com/diceanddungeons, patreon.com/diceanddungeons, and become a patron. Any support would be helpful. Maybe you can become a patron, and then I can buy some spray paint and continue working on this Apollo model. Okay. What I have accomplished today is I got two of the 3 decks of the service module detail interior done. I got the oxygen tanks and the hydrogen tanks, and these feed the fuel cells, which I'll assemble on Monday because I just don't want to mess with them again today. That would just be too risky. On Monday, I'm going to assemble these and then put them carefully away and hopefully not break them. I'm going to come back to this and work a little bit on the seams, which are still showing a little more than I want to. This is the escape rocket. And maybe work at painting the exhaust nozzles, rocket exhaust nozzles that appear on either side here. Okay. And then I'm going to spend most of the time on Monday. Unfortunately, you'll be watching me doing a lot of seam removal. I'm going to just be doing filing and sanding on this, which is the fuel tank inside the service module. Okay. I'll be working on this and on the rocket nozzle for the service module. This is the rocket that propels that slows it down so it inserts into lunar orbit, escapes lunar orbit, and actually does a little retrofire. Okay, so I'll be doing those pieces. And put this in here. This is the lattice work for the escape tower, which I haven't primed yet because I couldn't find this sticky tack, even though it was sitting right out in the open. Lovely. So I'm going to stick this in here. Try to put these things in this tray so that I can, like, don't put that in here. Put that to spill and make a mess. Make some room for these things. Put that there. I can set that there. This goes here. This can go there. So this has been mostly relaxing painting, mostly, and a little bit of cementing together, a little bit of assembly. And although it doesn't look like much, it does not look like much at all. I do have two of the three interior components of the service module completed. Yeah, I know. You'd think that after 3.5 hours of doing something, there'd be more to show for it, but that's not how this works. The way the relaxing painting with Dyson Dungeon works is that you watch me accomplish hardly anything at all over a fairly long period of time and get paint all over my hands, sometimes because the paint bottle explodes onto my fingers, and sometimes because a mystery happens. Just mysteriously, paint jumps onto my hands. Right? Side, get my handy dandy dust cover out. There we go. And I will be back more or less at 10 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Daylight Time, on Monday, continuing work on the Apollo. And I make lots of sounds. I don't know why I do that, but I do. It seems to fill the time. Thanks, everybody. Please help out by becoming a follower, sponsor, or patron. Dyson Dungeons really appreciates your attention. Tell all your friends and neighbors, family, everybody else about this stream and also about our Dungeons and Dragons show. And thanks and goodbye. I'll see you on Monday.